Shalom, this is Daniel John Lee with Torah Restoration Ministries, and I'm doing a special podcast. Typically I do a podcast in the midweek and on Shabbat, but I wanted to do a special podcast in light of some recent events that have happened. Some of you may know, if you follow politics, there was a pretty major political event that occurred on the Sabbath, actually, the Iowa straw poll, which is where most of the Republicans who are running for president will gather, and they'll conduct a sort of informal straw poll to find out which Republicans are front runners to try to win the nomination against Barack Obama in 2012. I'd like you to direct you to my website, www.spiritandtorah.com. And if you scroll down my website, toward the top, you're going to see a new article that I added just a couple weeks ago. And it's called The Black Awakening and the Anti-Messiah, or maybe it's called The Anti-Messiah and the Black Awakening. And I want you to read that article because I think it's very timely with what's happened. As some of you may know, if you follow politics, Ron Paul, who was considered a fringe candidate back in 2007, 2008, he won second place within like 150 votes of the one who won the straw poll. And so he's no longer considered a fringe candidate. And right around this time, last Friday and then over the weekend, Rush Limbaugh and several mainstream news stories sort of tried to suggest that Ron Paul was still a fringe candidate and no one really liked him. But their tune changed. As of today, there was an AP story that said that Ron Paul's defining the 2012 political election, and then there's a couple of other stories sort of saying the same thing, that Ron Paul is a major contender. And then I just saw a YouTube that Alex Jones produced where he's commenting on this, and he's talking about the rise of Ron Paul and the social movement or political movement that surrounds him. And I think Ron Paul, overall, he stands for a lot of great things. You know, he wants to restore the Constitution, he wants to abolish taxes, he wants to disband the Federal Reserve, and he has a lot of great ideas, and I agree with him on a lot of things. I don't agree with him on his stand on homosexuality. He seems to be pro-homosexual to me, and that's wrong. And I heard an interview that he had with a Christian named John Lawson, where he says that the Bible is incorrect when it comes to condemning homosexuality. So I definitely disagree with him on that. But without trying to paint Ron Paul as sort of a bad person, what I think my article points out, what I just wanted to make a brief podcast dealing with, is the fact that Ron Paul represents this sort of move to ultra-libertarianism that's sort of sprung up from the grassroots since about 2007. And it's only grown stronger. Shortly after Barack Obama was elected, you saw the rise of the Tea Party movements, which Ron Paul's sort of the godfather of. And the Tea Parties and Ron Paul and people like John Stossel, this ultra-libertarian slant is very much centered around individualized freedom, which is also sort of centered in exalting the self. And while a lot of the politics that Ron Paul stands for are quite good, make a lot of sense, there's a direction that this social and political shift is taking people that I don't even think Ron Paul or those people who are associated with the movement understand. And it's a very dark place. And what it is it's the exaltation of the self. The anti-Messiah and his minions, they're not going to be what we currently think of as the New World Order right now, okay? And they're not going to be Muslims, and they're not going to be some dark clandestine group known as the Illuminati sitting in a black room, or the bankers. They're actually going to look very noble, very beautiful, very awesome, and it's actually going to spring out of this movement toward freedom, believe it or not. This shift and tendency toward ultra-libertarianism and the exaltation of the self, and this idea that John Stossel encapsulates perfectly, which is let anyone do whatever they want as long as you don't hurt anyone. And that's sort of the philosophy that's behind this libertarian strain of individualized freedom. And this is the type of thing that the Anti-Messiah will love. This is the type of thing that the Anti-Messiah will use. What we're going to see is we're going to have millions and millions and billions of self-ruled islands, okay, people who are God unto themselves. And they are going to submit themselves to a person who will believe himself to be God. a neo-human is what he's going to believe. He's going to believe he's the next step in evolution to bridge the gap between humanity and the gods. And this sort of very exaltation of the self, this neo-humanity evolutionary garbage, will go very nicely with the political, social elements of this ultra-libertarianism, because it's all going to be centered on the self. It's all going to be on exalting the self. It's all going to be on removing as many social constraints as possible, as long as we don't hurt anyone else. And this is very antithetical to scriptures. Yahshua over and over says to deny the self, and to love Him with all your heart, soul, mind, and strength, and to love your neighbors yourself. Well, those people who truly live up to that, those people who truly, not just in word but in deed, deny the self, they're going to become very, very distasteful, very repugnant to the population who are all into exalting the self. And so I think you're going to see that in the name of liberty, in the name of freedom, in the name of kind of getting away from this all-intrusive government, communistic, socialistic thing that we see under Obama, in the name of throwing all that off, you're going to see the Alex Joneses and the Ron Pauls and the Tea Partiers rise up. And it wouldn't surprise me if Ron Paul becomes a major contender in the race and may even win. I don't know. But one thing's for sure, no matter what happens, this movement is going to directly lead toward the rise of the anti-Messiah, and the anti-Messiah is going to arise in this type of political climate. So don't fool yourself. Don't think that it's going to be some sort of dark, demonic type thing. Most of the world's not fooled by the Obamas of the world, or the George Soroses of the world, or the Prince Charleses of the world, or the Muslims of the world. They're not fooled by that. But what they will be fooled by are Christians and libertarians and liberty-minded folks in the name of peace and liberty and freedom, and in the name of restoring the Constitution, beginning to ever so subtly or not so subtly exalt the self, and exalt the self to the point where all other constraints are thrown to the side. Because people are just interested in elevating their own rights and what they can do. And this is not what Yahshua said to do. Yahshua said to lay down your rights. And, of course, that's not popular to hear about in the United States. But that's what Yahshua said to do. He said to lay down your rights. Even in the New Testament, in the renewed covenant, when Paul is addressing slaves, he says to honor their masters. Not to break away, not to fight for freedom, but to honor their masters and to serve them as if they're serving Yahweh. So I think it's going to be very interesting to see what happens. I just wanted to do this brief podcast because I think it's very timely. And again, go to my website, www.spiritandtorah.com. You'll see the article I wrote. It's toward the top, called "The Black Awakening and the Anti-Messiah," and I think it'll provide some helpful insight and shed some light on what's going on politically right now. All right, shalom. Take care. Have a great week. Bye bye.